Welcome everyone to the very first podcast of Maine Cannabis with Merideth and AnnMarie. I'm Merideth.
And I'm AnnMarie.
And we're also mother and daughter.
We've both worked as nurses in the Veterans Administration healthcare system with over 40 combined years of experience.
1 year ago, we opened the Vetted Cannabis dispensary here in Sanford, Maine.
I'm Vetted's nurse practitioner on site at the dispensary to help ensure that our clients receive the precision dosage that best suits their needs. I also issue medical cards and renew medical cards for Maine residents.
We're really excited about this podcast, which is not only going to cover all things cannabis in the state of Maine, but because there's also such a thriving musical scene here, we're including a Maine-based musical performance in every episode.
And that's one more reason for the well-known expression,
as Maine goes, so goes the nation. Alex McMahon founded and scaled multiple successful cannabis operations and is today a founding partner and operating manager of Medco in Lewiston.
Alex started his career in the hospitality and management, working in the food and beverage industry for several years before becoming involved full-time in the cannabis industry.
Alex is also the driving force, pun intended, behind one of the first cannabis delivery services in Maine, making cannabis accessible to nursing homes through snowstorms and to people with difficulty leaving the house.
Another innovative program that Alex was involved in launching was the Healing Community Food Challenge, which provided $100 in weekly grocery gift cards to a number of local families struggling financially as a result of the state mandates protecting public health and safety in the face of COVID-19.
We asked Alex to give us the details of how this program came about.
Yeah, so the Healing Community Food Challenge is the food drive that we kicked up kind of at the onset of COVID. So we as a company, we've always tried to have a community-centric focus. It is, our middle name, which we didn't really realize until later, but it's pretty fitting. Since we opened, we've done actually a lot of things with the community. We've done one of the bigger ones that we've done before the food challenge was we actually support a agency that's in Lewiston called the Rest Center. That is like a it's for addiction therapy, but it's more so, it's not a rehab, it's more of like a safe space where people can go. It's here in Lewiston. We've actually been, we pay their rent every month, and beyond that, a little bit more. So we've contributed a good bit to that, and we've always wanted to kind of branch out and kind of see what all exactly we can do for the community. We've donated a little bit of money to cancer research because we like focusing on things that cannabis can be really helpful for. So when COVID started, we realized, there's a lot of people that are out of work right now. There's a lot of industries that are really affected. Cannabis has been kind of lucky in this one to be not affected as much. That being said, cannabis being a relatively new industry, we do want to sort of establish the industry as an industry for the community. People like buying local, people like cannabis that's grown locally. And for those reasons, we feel like we do have an obligation as a cannabis company to put back into our community. So when we first started rapping about the Healing Community Food Challenge, it was actually an idea by a good mutual friend of ours, Bill Cody. So Bill Cody sort of came up with the idea. He pointed out to us that, hey, there's a lot of people losing their jobs right now. There's a lot of hunger issues that are about to be upon our community. We immediately thought it was a brilliant idea, leapt immediately into action. We actually went from concept to a fully rolled out program within a matter of like a couple of weeks. We worked with a few different agencies here to make this successful. So first off, we teamed up with United Way of Androscoggin to help us source families that are truly in need. So United Way put us in touch with over a dozen agencies that are right here in Androscoggin County, including Community Concepts, the YMCA, the YWCA, a lot of different social workers that have families that they work with directly that their programs are doing great things for, but also, a gift card for some food once a week can be extremely helpful for these people as well. So that was our first step, kind of making sure that we can establish a good relationship with United Way so that we can attract families that could truly benefit from our help. And then from there, we actually started up a conversation with the LA Metro Chamber of Commerce, for which we are regional leaders. They've been great to work with so far, and they hopped right on this one for us because a big part of it, there's kind of two elements of the outreach here. We needed to secure the families, but then also we knew that we could magnify our outreach if we had other businesses participating. So Medco at this point, there's been about $20,000 raised and contributed directly to the families. And when I say directly, I do mean the entirety of the capital that's raised is going straight to the families. Medco is eating the overhead. We do deliveries all across the state anyway. So we're able to send gift cards out with our drivers on a regular basis to hit these families that are in need. And then, so as I mentioned, Medco's carried a good bit of the contributions ourselves. And then we've had a lot of different businesses that have opted to participate. A lot of them found us through the chamber, and then they signed on. And then actually a lot of other cannabis companies have participated as well. Really, it was the initial plan was we were going to run it during the state of emergency. And then, of course, the state of emergency kind of kept getting revived. And so, at some point, we kind of realized that hunger's not ever going away. COVID, that may or may not, but hunger is something that has been a part of humanity since for forever. And it's not going to now. Granted, while the hunger levels across our nation have been going down and across the country have been going down, ultimately, there will always be people in our community that could just use a little bit of help. We're not trying to judge anybody. We try to make it as simple as possible. If the social worker believes that you're in a place of need, then so do we, and we try to help. At this point, there's been quite a bit of organic reach out to us as well from the social workers. So they've really gotten into the swing of things where they know if they have somebody that could use a little bit, they can reach out to us and we can make it happen for them.
Hey, Jennifer Lund of Friend Jen & Co. of Richmond, Maine. We're just so grateful to have you on our podcast today, Jennifer.
Thank you.
Yep, we appreciate having you, but we were just dazzled by your background, Jen, in that, you're a nurse, you're a mother, you're a grower, you've opened a store, you're one of the matriarchs in the industry, and we'd love you to share your story with us today. So please do.
Great. Well, thank you for thinking of me, and I'm happy to tell my journey if I can do it well.
It'll be perfect.
So I started the cannabis business in 2010. I had just become a new nurse out of divorce, and I'd been nursing maybe a couple years at Spring Harbor Mental Health Hospital. I'm a psychiatric nurse. And I got involved in 2010 just from literally my mom telling me that the cannabis had been passed medically. And I think it was a 2009 vote, and she had mentioned to me that it had been passed on the ballot. So she thought that since I had a love of gardening and a background in nursing, that it might be something that would complement my nursing career. And coming from my mom, she became more progressive in her later life. So it was kind of an interesting comment that came from her. And really, honestly, I only heard what she said and took it. And the next day or the few days after, I just kind of jumped on this opportunity. I didn't really think very far into the future. It was just something that was said to me. And then I thought, maybe she's right, because I am a gardener. I'm a hobbyist by, I don't call myself a horticulturist by degree, but I call myself a horticulturist by hobby and by design. So I, went at it, basically, just went at it from there.
So your mom was your inspiration. You had a background. And then what happened next?
I started going to the meetings at the Department of Human Services, which were really small meetings at the time. Not too many people showed up, just a few lobbyists and other people that had been in the business since earlier, like 1999, when actually marijuana has been legal medically for a very long time in Maine.
Wow.
I didn't know that at the time. So I just started going to meetings and just going up to Augusta and trying to understand, how this was going to take place in the state of Maine. I had no background, zero. So I knew nothing about, the laws or what had gone on in Maine or, how any of this all came together. That's been the learning process for 10 years, honestly.
So it's a learn as you go? I mean,
as you go.
Mm-hmm.
It's a learn as you go thing. It's not, that would be a barrier. That would be something that's hard because it's not something that, it's right. It's medical and then it's regulating as a drug. So there's a lot behind that and there's daily changes all the time. So what happens one day might not be the same the next day. And there has to be some flexibility with that understanding. Otherwise, it can be very frustrating along the lines because the state has to change a lot of laws and they're making changes too, as the program progressed over the past 10 years.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but I would, that would be a barrier that I've had, is just the slow, progression of learning the laws. But yeah.
So in the last 5 years, what are some of the most memorable, accomplishments, defeats, So,
yep. Yeah. So 5 years ago, we opened, we moved the grow out of my home into a bigger grow, that one that we could afford. So that's always been a thing. We've never done anything that we can't afford to do. So we've always kind of started small as a small business.
Who's the we? When you speak of we, who are the we? Yeah.
So I started my own thing in 2010, and then in 2015 I brought on my business partner. Mm-hmm. And when we went into a bigger warehouse, just because we were going into a bigger warehouse, and I would have needed more help. So we did that, and that was 2015, and we moved into a bigger cultivation. Like I said, one that we could afford. And then we expanded our business out of there. That was when we really became involved as caregivers and really picked up a bigger patient base and did all those things. So that was big. And then, all the fast law changes that happened between 2015 and 2020 was pretty progressive for the industry in Maine. A lot of changes happened there. So, and then a couple of years later, we had the opportunity to open up the retail front. And that we haven't really sat down and been like, I always knew there was a vision and I always knew where I wanted to be, but not all of it's been graceful, put it that way. Mm-hmm. So a couple of years later, I had the opportunity to open the retail front. I was sick with cancer at the time. We just took it on overnight.
Wow. Take pause and tell us more about that. You were dealing with a very serious illness during this time as well?
I did. I had cancer, breast cancer diagnosis in 2018. And that was a big news because I had cancer that had, progressed into my lymph nodes and that sort of thing. So that was big news, and it kind of set us all back about maybe a couple months on how we were going to reorganize the next couple of years, and knowing that my treatment was going to be a 2-year long thing. So,
gosh.
So we just kind of had to reorganize everybody's positions and what they were doing. My son at the time was working for a big dispensary in Maine, so he took over a lot of the work and was doing, evenings until late at night. And, everybody was working really their hardest when I got sick with cancer. So, and then we took on the retail front, and that was just a beast. The retail fronts are a beast because it really is day-to-day law and making sure that we're not, doing things incorrect, that we're staying on it with the changes. And, just the money and the bookkeeping and dealing with
the cash industry,
and the banks and learning how we can, use banks or not. And all that is really where we're at now. Those are more of the struggles of the day-to-day business, which is any business. It's like any business.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that that's another issue with marijuana is that people, we really are a business. Okay. That's what we are first. And, when you talk to there's a lot of stigma around marijuana, just that it's been a drug that's been bad in the past and it's associated with a lot of other crime and stuff like that.
Right.
So one of the big things is just being able to talk about marijuana as an industry and as a business. That's becoming more fluent, and it's much better than it used to be. But it is kind of segregated in our country. There's areas where it's worse and the stigma is worse than it is in other areas where it's become more progressive. So, there's a lot of different ideas out there about marijuana.
Well, do know that this was one of the reasons why we wanted to feature you is because of the stigma, and we thought that you'd be a leading female in the industry that could help to allay some of that. So certainly we thank you for that. And Jen, also take a minute to tell us about, you said you had a retail front somewhere, and where is that? We want to give an opportunity to give you some recognition for all of your efforts, for sure. Tell us about Richmond.
Yeah. So the retail front is in Richmond, and it's right off of exit 43. And we were just lucky to have that location come at us when we were deciding where we were going to be. And it just so happens to be it's right in front of our cultivation. Yeah. It was not planned like that. So we just had this opportunity to grab it. We took it. We liked the location. We liked the corner. So the store is there, and it's a medical storefront now. And we just rebranded, which is really nice. And it's a female-owned business, but not to be confused with like a female brand. We are a brand. We're not a female brand. We're a female-owned business.
Understood. And you have family members working with you, some, few, all?
I do.
Tell us about that.
Yep. I have my ex-husband, who I've known since I was a little girl. He is our site manager. Yeah. And he does all the little extra things and all the errands and all the equipment and all the stuff that is important that I don't want to do. And I can't. Actually, some of it I can't do. And then there's Jack, who's 31, and he is my actual business partner on paper. And then there's Kelly.
Who's Jack to you?
He's my son.
Oh, I see. Yep.
So he's 31. And then there's Kelly, who's 28. And she's had dispensary and regulatory and medical background as well. She's running the store. She's the manager. And then there's Katie, who's doing the marketing and branding, which we've just spent a lot of time on the past 6 months on. Fantastic.
And Katie and Kelly are also your daughters, as I understand.
Yes.
That's amazing. What an amazing story, Jen. Yeah. I just think that, again, this is hopefully just the first time, and hopefully you'll come, and if not in person, we can phone you again in the future to hear more about your journey. I think as a female in the cannabis industry, as a mother, and also co-owner with my daughter Merideth, that we're hoping to learn from you, and we're grateful for you sharing your news with us today, and we definitely will ring you up in the future. Thank you. I appreciate it. There's lots of things to talk about, so anytime would be great. Thanks, Jen. Okay, awesome. Well, take care. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Thank you. Hey, welcome, Sean Ramsey, a U.S. Army specialist, to Maine Cannabis podcast with AnnMarie and Merideth. and we're delighted to have you, Sean. Let me just tell the audience a little bit about what I know about you, and you fill in the rest.
All right.
Because you're just an amazing person from what little I've learned about you, and you being a veteran, a U.S. Army veteran, a cancer survivor. You've also been somewhat, I'll use the term, a survivalist in Alaska. You've been also a creative and clever cook, years of chef training and cooking training, and now you even have some thoughts about integrating cannabis into the food industry, which also just dazzles us. But can you start with your veteran status? What did you do? When did you do it? And bring us forward in your life.
No, I was in the Army from 97 to 2004. I was short-range air defense.
What does that mean?
We were Bradley mounted air defenders with shoulder-fired Stinger missiles. We provide short-range air defense for task force. And,
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Where did you do your training for that?
In Germany.
Germany, I see. Uh-huh.
Wackernheim, Germany.
Wow.
Macaulay Barracks.
Wow.
A place that most people have never heard of.
I haven't heard about that.
Yeah.
And how many people were there at that barracks?
About 700 people on our post. We were a
Whoa.
small one-unit rapid deployment post. And
Wow, amazing. And you call that small, 700 people.
well, comparatively.
Wow.
Yeah.
So keep going. And so you're a veteran, and that's fantastic.
Yep.
And tell us more about your life.
Oh, I've been a chef pretty much since my first job. I started out working restaurants in the Old Port, scrubbing pots at 16, and used my GI Bill after I got out of the Army to go to culinary school. And
Wow. Are you a Maine resident?
I am.
Born and bred?
Yeah, born in Biddeford.
Woo! Wow, even better. The story gets even better.
Oh, yeah.
So keep going.
Then after I got out of the Army, like I said, I used my GI Bill to go to culinary school. Worked in restaurants, a lot of remote lodges in places like Alaska. And
Ooh. What about Alaska?
I lived there for almost 8 years.
Really?
Took a lot of remote jobs, cooking in gold mines and up on the North Slope in the oil fields in the wintertime, cooking for the drilling crews.
Wow. Fantastic. So then your life progressed, and you had a health issue at one time.
Yep, 2010, I had testicular cancer.
Wow.
Yeah, I had surgery, had it removed, and had chemo for a few months. And
Oh, I'm so sorry.
but
How do you
cannabis-
suppose all of that? How did you suppose all of that came to be?
My theory is that it's related to my military service. There's been a study that I've read about in the Army Times recently that a lot of the posts are coming up with chemicals in the water that are cancer-causing, I guess you would say.
In the drinking water, in the leached into the soils, into the wells, into the...
All it leached into the ground, into the drinking waters and everything from
my.
firefighting chemicals that they've used over the years for training.
Wow, awful.
And-
So then you had some symptoms, you had a workup, and cancer was diagnosed, and then what happened?
Yep. I found out on a Thursday, and by Tuesday I was in surgery. It was a quick process.
How old were you at the time?
I'm 44, so I was 34. Just turned
Wow.
34 at the time.
Wow. And so what was that like? How symptoms and...
Scary. Actually didn't have pain. I just had swelling.
Yeah.
It was just kind of becoming cumbersome, getting in the way. So I went to the doctor, and I went to the ER at midnight because I knew there wouldn't be many people there. And the doctor sent me down for a sonogram, and he came back in a couple minutes later, all sad-faced and apologizing. Oh, it's cancer. I was like, come on.
God.
Like, yeah.
Oh, gosh. And then was there further treatment? Was there after the surgery?
Yeah, I had 4 big rounds of chemo. They thought I would be more
Wow.
better off with a few big rounds instead of extended smaller rounds, and it put me down pretty good. But cannabis is what got me through it.
Really?
Chemo, I was able to eat once in a while. Without chemo, without cannabis, I wouldn't have been able to. My gums, my teeth, everything hurt. It was terrible. And then I'd smoke, and I'd be able to get a little bit of food down and keep it down.
Wow.
So.
Amazing story. Wow. Sean, and so we wanted to hear some more about you being a chef in this industry. So cannabis helped you through. I'm assuming there was some physician in your background that recommended or...
Yep. The doctor, the urologist that I dealt with for my cancer, on my discharge papers, he said, continue cannabis use daily.
Wow. How about that?
Yep.
Surely a pioneer.
beneficial.
That doctor was a rarity
Yep.
because, the stigma that existed back then, and even so today, but especially years past, the stigma is enormous. When you say cannabis, people once thought it only referred to criminals and to skull and crossbones.
I'm actually glad to see that they voted and are continuing to vote on legalizing it federally.
So you're talking about the MORE Act, which is the Marijuana Opportunity, Reinvestment Expungement Act, which went before Congress on Friday, and now it moves forward into the Senate. However, there's certainly to be an arm wrestle in the Senate. But to your point, it will decriminalize cannabis, which is wonderful, and even address some criminals that are incarcerated. It will reduce their terms. But for me personally, as a nurse practitioner, I'm eager to see that the scheduling of cannabis, it's a Schedule I drug, equal to heroin, which means it has no medicinal effect.
It has no business.
And you're living proof it has medicinal effect.
Absolutely.
But this MORE Act would remove that. And once it's removed from scheduling, then it allows for the National Institute of Health, or federal dollars, grant monies to infuse into research. So there'll be human studies, so we can study the effects on someone like you with testicular cancer. How does it affect? What does it do? And in the long term, it will help with dosing standards. I mean, I'm like you. I'm hopeful that the MORE Act, progresses through the Senate and we have some positive action in that regard. Thanks for bringing that up, Sean. Wow, you're following the politics behind it as well.
Absolutely, yeah. It'll make it accessible for a lot more veterans, and the VA will be able to prescribe it. And some people's criminal records that shouldn't have any charges on them can be expunged.
Yeah, that'll be something. And in banking as well.
Absolutely.
It's a largely cash industry right now because cannabis is federally illegal. You can't bank it properly.
Right.
You can't take credit cards, and so it's a real hindrance. But hey, Sean, before we close, tell me, what would you say to other veterans that maybe they are either debating cannabis use or someone that has a serious illness like you did? What would you say to those two parties?
I would say come to Vetted and talk to AnnMarie, because it'll be beneficial to you, and figure out a plan for you, because it got me through a lot between the cancer and PTSD, the anxiety, the day-to-day, just trying to get out there and live life. It's helped me tremendously.
And do you use daily, would you say, every other day? So, I mean, it doesn't... You don't appear to be impaired today. So it's not that you use to a dose extreme that is sedating or...
No. It's just to get through. I don't need to walk around loopy all day. Just micro-dosing, I guess you would call it.
Yes, that's what I call it. Yeah. Fantastic, Sean. We're so grateful for you to come to, Maine Cannabis podcast and sharing your story. You are an amazing man. You're a survivor. You're, as a veteran, amazing. I'm hoping you'll continue to pursue, the origins of that, your thought and theory about this cancer that you had. And maybe it was a military-born illness, perhaps. And then your advocacy for others, sharing your story, know that it makes a huge impact on others that, haven't given themselves permission to try cannabis.
It's time.
Yeah, it's time.
Definitely.
So we thank you so much, Sean. You're an amazing guy. We hope to have you back again, too.
I will be back if you ask.
Fantastic. Thank you. That's it from Maine Cannabis. Bye now.
Brad Sloat is a native Mainer who grew up in Auburn and was a tackle on his high school football team, the Edward Little Red Eddies. He went on to play 4 years of collegiate football at the University of New Hampshire, where he was an All-American.
But Brad was always as interested in music as he was in sports. His passion for the guitar led him to form a band, Five Face North, during the 2000s, which toured throughout the state.
When we started working on this podcast, we knew we wanted Brad to create our theme music, which you'll hear at the beginning and end of every episode.
And as a special treat on our first episode, Brad is performing the full version of our theme music, and he's doing it from his very own man cave, which is lined with his amazing collection of guitars, ranging from the Fender Stratocaster to the Les Paul.
The Maine music scene is especially vibrant. We're going to incorporate local performances into as many of our episodes as possible.
Oh, yeah. And to start things off, here's Brad Sloat.
Well, there you have it, our very first podcast of Maine Cannabis with Merideth and AnnMarie.
We want to thank all of our wonderful guests, and most of all, we want to thank you for joining us.
We'll be back soon with another podcast, and if you have any suggestions for topics you'd like to be covered, or maybe you feel you have a story to tell, or you'd like to be a guest on the show, please email us at hello@vettedmaine.com.
See you next time.